Welcome to the Google Cloud update for the last week of January 2026. I'm your host, and we have a packed episode for you today. We'll be diving into some massive performance boosts for Spanner with its new columnar engine, and a very important security bulletin affecting GKE that you'll want to hear about. We'll also cover a flurry of updates for developers, including new .NET 10 runtimes across our serverless platforms. Plus, we'll talk about new FIPS compliance for cloud load balancing, a ton of features in the new Looker 26 release, and a whole host of updates across BigQuery, AI, and observability. Let's get into it. First up, let's talk databases, and we're starting with a bang in Cloud Spanner. Spanner is getting a brand new columnar engine, now in public preview. This is huge for analytical queries. It's a storage technique that can speed up scans by up to 200 times on your live operational data, and it does this without impacting your transactional workloads. The release also includes a new major compaction API to help you convert your existing data into the new columnar format faster. This is a game changer for HTAP, or hybrid transactional and analytical processing, workloads. Spanner also now supports the UUID data type for both Google SQL and PostgreSQL dialect databases. You can generate these using the NEW UUID function in Google SQL or GenRandom UUID in PostgreSQL. This is great for creating unique primary keys without sequential hotspots. And one more for Spanner, it now supports Z-standard compression functions. You can use ZSTD compress, ZSTD decompress to bytes, and ZSTD decompress to string to compress and decompress string or bytes values, which can help save on storage costs. Sticking with databases, Cloud SQL for both MySQL and PostgreSQL has a handy new feature. You can now assign database roles to both built-in database users and IAM database users directly when you create or update them. This simplifies permission management significantly. And for those of you using Cloud SQL for MySQL, Performance Capture is now in preview to help diagnose those tricky transient performance issues. And for our Postgres fans, AlloyDB now has preview support for database servers compatible with PostgreSQL version 18. Finally, to round out our data movement news, DataStream now supports Spanner as a source. This is a perfect addition, allowing you to stream changes from your Spanner databases to other services. Now, let's shift over to the world of data analytics and business intelligence, starting with BigQuery. BigQuery is making data analysis more accessible with conversational analytics, now in preview. You can now chat with your data using natural language, accelerating your time to insight. On top of that, you can now create BigQuery ML models directly from the Google Cloud Console, a feature that is now generally available. For security-conscious folks, there's a new random hash predefined masking rule. It uses a salted hash algorithm, offering stronger security than the standard SHA 256 rule when you're masking sensitive data. And if you're looking to get more data into BigQuery, the data transfer service now supports transfers from Shopify and MailChimp, both in preview. Lastly, Gemini Cloud Assist can now help you discover resources across your projects. For instance, you could ask it for a specific table schema. This is also in preview. Now, let's talk about Looker. A major new version, Looker 26.0, is rolling out with a ton of features. Gemini in Looker can now generate a summary and an analysis of an Explore. And conversational analytics gets a show reasoning toggle, giving you step-by-step insight into how the agent reaches its answers. For developers, the continuous integration feature has been updated for better UI integration, and you can now delete your local developer copy of a project's Git repository with a single button. For Looker original instances, several Labs features are now available and on by default, including tab dashboards for better organization, dashboard filter enhancements for a smoother user experience, and custom tooltips for more detailed visualizations. And for Looker Google Cloud Core instances, you can now view the public egress IP addresses for instances that use Private Service Connect, which is helpful when configuring outbound connections. In other data news, Dataform's API now supports organizing your code assets into folders and repositories in preview. All right, let's pivot to a very important security segment. A security bulletin has been issued regarding multiple vulnerabilities in the OpenSSL library, with the most critical one being a high-severity vulnerability that could allow for remote code execution. Now, for the important part, what is affected? The good news is that the control planes and core infrastructure for GKE on AWS, GKE on Azure, and Google Distributed Cloud are not vulnerable. These services use Boring Crypto, a hardened version of Boring SSL, which doesn't contain the vulnerable code. However, the OpenSSL library, included in the GKE Node OS images like Container Optimized OS and Ubuntu, does contain the vulnerable code. This means that while your control plane is secure, software running inside your nodes could be at risk. So, what should you do? For GKE, GDC for VMware, GKE on AWS, and GKE on Azure, there is no action required at this time. The security bulletin will be updated when new GKE versions with the patched OpenSSL are available. For GDC for bare metal customers, you are responsible for the Node OS, so you should update your Linux OS image to one that includes the latest patched OpenSSL distribution. Please check the security bulletin for all the details. We won't list all the CVE numbers here, but it's important to be aware of this and watch for those patched GKE versions. Continuing with our containers and infrastructure segment, Config Connector now has support for the Vertical Pod Autoscaler, or VPA. You can enable VPA for Config Connector components to automatically adjust resource requests, which is fantastic for efficiency. Be aware, though, there is a breaking change with an upgrade to the OpenTelemetry image, which removes the deprecated Open Census Receiver. This only impacts custom metric solutions that were using it. In Google Kubernetes Engine itself, support for the Stream Control Transmission Protocol, or SCTP, on GKE Dataplane v2 is now generally available. This enables direct SCTP communication for your pods and services. Also, the N4A machine series, which is based on ARM architecture, is now generally available for both Autopilot and standard GKE clusters. In related news, Artifact Registry now supports custom organization policies on notes and occurrences for artifact analysis, giving you more granular control over your software supply chain security. And Cloud Deploy has removed the limit on deployment minutes per delivery pipeline, simplifying quotas. Let's talk networking and security. For those in regulated industries like government or finance, cloud load balancing has a major update. You can now apply a FIPS-compliant SSL policy to your application load balancers and proxy network load balancers. A new predefined policy, FIPS 2022-05, restricts the load balancer to use only FIPS 140-2 and 140-3 validated cryptographic modules and ciphers. You can also now enforce TLS 1.3 as the minimum protocol version for the highest level of security. This is a huge win for compliance. And now for our weekly IAM update. It's a light one this week. Just kidding, it's massive. Permissions have been added to dozens of roles across services like Gemini Enterprise, Discovery Engine, GKE, Database Migration Service, and Distributed Cloud Edge Container, which also added several new roles. Rather than list all several dozen permission updates here, we strongly encourage you to check the IAM release notes for the full details on how these changes might affect your projects. Moving on to observability. The Stackdriver suite, which includes cloud logging, monitoring, and trace, received some great quality of life improvements. To better support correlation between log and trace data, the format for the trace field in a log entry has been relaxed. This makes it much easier to jump between the Logs Explorer and the Trace Details page to debug issues. Also, a big new feature for the Ops agent. You can now install and manage the agent on VMs across your entire project using global VM extension manager policies. This lets you enforce agent versions and keep them up to date automatically, which is a huge time saver for fleet management. For our serverless developers, if you're a fan of .NET, you'll be happy to hear that support for the .NET 10 runtime is now in preview for Cloud Functions, Cloud Run, and App Engine Flexible Environment. And a quick but useful update for cloud storage. When you list buckets, you can now use a partial success option. This means if one location is temporarily down, the API will still return the list of buckets it could reach, instead of just failing the whole request. Finally, let's wrap up with the latest in AI. Starting with Document AI, new layout parser and custom extractor models powered by Gemini 3 Pro are now available in preview. A quick note, these processor versions use a global endpoint, so they are not compliant with strict data residency standards. Gemini Enterprise has expanded its data store support, now connecting to Confluence Data Center, Jira Data Center, and Zendesk in preview. Also, the Agent Designer Visual Flow Builder is now available for all agents, not just new ones. Over in Vertex AI, the virtual try-on feature is now generally available with significant improvements to latency and quality. There are also some pricing updates and retirements to be aware of. Vertex AI Agent Builder Sessions, Memory Bank, and Code Execution will begin charging for usage on February 11th, 2026. And the Costrol and Mistral large models were retired as of January 21st. And that's a wrap for this week's Google Cloud Update. From the massive performance gains with Spanner's columnar engine to the critical OpenSSL security advisory for GKE and new compliance features in cloud load balancing, there is a lot to explore. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week for another dose of Google Cloud News.